So there's one scene in the film where this is older guy who's just like dancing at the parties, just kind of enjoying himself. And when I saw it, I basically yelled out, he was at that. If this is based on a real thing, he was at that original thing, or he wanted to be there. We couldn't get there, so he finally made it. I was so happy for him. Greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. Jason Freeman, and I'd like to welcome you all to my channel. In this video, I review the second episode of the Small Axe Anthology Series titled Lovers Rock. I'm going to tell you what I liked about the film. I'm going to tell you what I didn't really like about the film. And then I'm going to tell you why I think you should see the film or just skip it. Now, at any point, feel free to click the notification bell or subscribe to my channel to get more content. So without further ado, let's begin. We see this house party that appears, based on the dress, to be either in the 1970s or possibly maybe 1980. The other thing that kind of sets the time period also is the music. The music is amazing. That's one of the things I like, which I'll get to a little bit later. But basically, you have this party, people are enjoying themselves, and it really focuses on this one lady, Martha, played by Amarah-Jae St, who does an amazing performance. Now, the film is directed by Academy Award-winning director Steve McQueen. It's also co-written by Mr. McQueen, and definitely feels like a love letter to the Afro-Caribbean community in England during the time period in which it's set, again, the 1970s, early 1980s. Now, what I like about the film? Well, the first thing I liked about the film is that it's a much smaller film than the first episode of Small Axe, which was Mangrove. Now, in this particular film, it's a lot more personal, a lot more intimate, and very much isn't about kind of the bigger social implications of a particular thing. In this case, with the criminal justice, with Mangrove, the policing and things like that. This is more just about personal stories, how people live on a day-to-day basis. The film is definitely told, or very much told, with these small shots. So rather than these big, massive scenes like we saw with Mangrove, it focuses on individual people, faces. When people are dancing, they're dancing close to each other, very much telling these very personal stories. You get a lot of the film from these tight shots, which is something I just really love about this film. You feel like you're part of the action, you feel like you're part of what's going on, and you very much kind of enjoy yourself along with everyone else at the party. Very much wish you kind of could be there, eating food, dancing and enjoying the atmosphere. Also, like the Mangrove, this film is beautifully shot. Now, even though it's set at this kind of inside this house, at this party, in the dark, at night, it's still beautifully lit. There's a lot of color, it's a lot of pop. And because, again, of these tight shots, you just see a lot of detail in kind of the interactions between the people. And so it's a very beautiful film. And I'm not even just talking about the actors and actresses playing, just it's a beautifully shot film that I really just enjoyed watching. I also like the lack of dialogue in many places, the lack of talk. So in many ways, kind of like how I found Mangrove to be a bit preachy at times, just really, saying and not showing. This film is the opposite. It basically shows and doesn't really tell much, but it does say a lot in just the visuals. And that's, again, the thing that I really, really liked. As you're watching the film, you're seeing people's expressions. You're seeing how they react to each other. There's tension at times. The tension really comes from the body language. It comes from how close people are to each other. Martha goes down the hall, and then this other guy follows her, and things like that. So it builds the tension without saying a word, which, again, is genius filmmaking. And the music, oh my God, the music is amazing. There's music from the United States that I'm familiar with. There's music from, I'm assuming, Great Britain. It's just, a very musically vibrant movie. And so, if you're like, I watched it at home, and so I was standing up watching most of it, and you kind of move along with the music. You just really enjoy the music in the film. And also, growing up in the 1980s myself, there's a lot of nostalgia. So I grew up listening to music from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, so I was familiar with a lot of the music. This is one scene with they're playing kung fu fighting, this song from the 1970s, and it's just a fun scene. And so you get that throughout this film, where with Mangrove, it's a lot of kind of all over the place, and kind of these big situations with large implications. It's just this fun time that you're having watching the film. Another thing I liked was something I did not really expect, but thinking about Black British culture, it makes sense. There is what's known as code switching. So people who aren't familiar with that term, code switching is when you can speak in one way in one setting and just switch your language, how you talk, I would say within the same language, in another setting. And so in this case, you every so often, because Martha is a Afro-Caribbean person who essentially was born and grew up in Great Britain, she's able to code switch. So she goes from speaking kind of patois and kind of conversing with the kind of Caribbean immigrant people at the party. She's also, because she grew up in Great Britain, able to kind of speak in more kind of a British dialect. And it's interesting to kind of see that dynamic, because it happens with multiple people in the film, where they're speaking one way when they're speaking with their the other kind of like Jamaican and Grenadian and Caribbean individuals, and then when they're either trying to make a point or speaking to someone who is not from that community, they code switch and speak more with kind of the quote unquote proper British dialect. And so I just found that interesting, and it's something that I didn't expect. But again, coming from an African American community where we do also code switch, I just found that really interesting to see. Just on the side note, you should definitely check out House of the Dragon on HBO Max. I'm through 4 episodes, and this is an amazing show. Again, same thing, beautifully shot, great acting. Now it could go the way of the first Game of Thrones series. So I hope if it does that, then I'll talk about it on a later video. But as of right now, it's 5, and that's like pun intended. All right, so what did I not like about the episode? Nothing. I didn't like it. No, so I love this episode, but there were a couple little kind of critiques I would have for this film episode. The main critique is it sometimes feels a little long. The only reason I say that is because it's a smaller story that focuses mainly on one house party. Oftentimes it can feel a little redundant. You see the same kind of similar shots over and over again. Now the story does play out overnight, so you are still getting story. It's just that if you cut out, say, half of the dancing part, I still think you get a really vibrant, really beautiful story. But again, I know it had to be in a film. It was at a film festival, at film festivals, and so it had to be a certain length. My assumption is, but again, I just think it can feel a little bit long. There's one scene where I'm like, oh wow, am I close to the end? And I paused it to check the time, and I was only like 40 minutes in. So again, it could be a little redundant. But that being said, again, I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed being there with these characters, and so I really like that. But again, it feels a little bit long at times. I guess another critique, and this isn't really a critique of the film itself, and this is something I had to do with Mangrove too, is that because I'm an American and I'm familiar with American dialects, I'm from the South, I had to put on like subtitles just so I can understand some of what was said at times. Now again, it more so because I didn't grow up in this community. I didn't grow up hearing these different like sayings and how people talk, and so that was more just something. So as I could read it easier than I can understand it. Again, not a critique; it's just cultural thing. And so someone coming from the outside like myself, it's going to be a little hard to understand at times. But with that, once I knew what they were saying with the subtitles, I was all in, and I just love this story. And I'll say, if you're someone who's really into action, so I think about people who love Marvel movies or like the Fast and the Furious movies, those type of movies, this probably is not the film for you, because there is action at points, but a lot of it is more just experience. This is a cinematic experience more than action. And so, I could see people saying it was boring. I didn't, and so if you're not really into the experience, into the, for me also nostalgia. Even though I didn't grow up in Great Britain, the music. I mean, I grew up in a Black community. It felt like home watching it, and so it's one of those things. If you're not into that, if you're more into action fighting, watch Mangrove. There is definitely action in that, though a lot of it is court stuff, but definitely there's more physical action in that film, though there are some, again, tense moments in the film and a little bit of action. It's just that's not the focus of this film. So should you see this film or skip it? Come on. You got to see this. You should see this film. I like this film better than Mangrove. I enjoyed Mangrove. I'm definitely glad I watched Mangrove. But if I'm going to rewatch one of these episodes, and I've only watched the two, if I'm going to rewatch an episode, I'm definitely going to rewatch this one first. Because again, it was more of an experience. It's like, especially when there's different points, I don't want to spoil anything, where they're at the dance and just things happen, and it's like, if you're not from the community, it's going to be like, oh wow, what's happening? But you feel it. You feel the emotion is happening within the scene. And so, with the Mangrove, there's a lot of preaching. It was a lot of, talking about the political side of life and the whole court case. With this one, it's just a feeling, emotions, showing what life is like on this one night in this one place. And it tells a lot of story without saying very many words. So definitely see this film. I would say see it multiple times. I've only seen it once, but I will watch it again. But I would definitely say watch this film. If you like this review, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, feel free to share this video with anyone else who you think might either find my review or the film interesting. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of your day.